Yes, now you can start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to cover the topic body fluids and circulation, which is chapter 18 from NCERT class 11th biology textbook. My name is Mohit Mantri and I'm a student at ICER Pune. So we know that 70% of our body is made up of water. This body makes up the body fluid. Just a minute. So this body fluids is further divided into two parts, which is extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. So around 28 liters of the fluid is made up of intracellular fluid, which is present inside the cells, and the rest is extracellular fluid, which makes up 14 liter of the fluid, and which is further divided into interstitial fluid and the blood plasma. So these intracellular fluid are present inside the cell. They can cross the cell membrane and enter into the interstitial spaces, which is the extracellular spaces in the tissue. And the fluid present there is interstitial fluid, and blood plasma flows inside the blood vessels of the body. And via the capillary membrane, they can they can move from plasma to interstitial fluid and vice versa. And there is another small compartment of fluid which is known as transcellular fluid, and this includes the synovial fluid, peritoneal, pericardial, intraocular spaces such as aqueous humor and vitreal humor, and the cerebrospinal fluid. And these all are also known as specialized type of extracellular fluids. So let's talk about blood. Blood makes up about 8% of the total body fluids, and it is the body fluid which delivers necessary substances such as nutrient, oxygen, hormones, and other metabolic products, and also transport metabolic waste products away from these cells. And it is a special type of connective tissue which consists of a fluid matrix known as plasma and the formed elements, which includes all the cell corpuscles. So this blood is divided into two, plasma and formed elements. The plasma makes about 55% of the blood, and it further contains 91 to 92% of water, and other than that proteins as well as other solutes. So major proteins inside the plasma are albumin protein, globulin protein, fibrinogen, and prothrombin proteins. And the other solutes include all the ions, nutrient molecules, waste product, hormones, gases, regulatory substance, etc. The formed elements makes up 45% of the blood, out of which more than 99% is erythrocytes, which is the red blood cells, and leukocytes and platelets makes up less than 1% each of the blood. And this leukocyte is further divided into neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. So let's talk about plasma. Plasma is the straw-colored fluid, uh, which consists of 55% of blood, as I already said, and 92% of it is water, and rest is protein and other solutes. The major proteins are fibrinogen, globulin, and albumin. Fibrinogen are needed for clotting or coagulation of blood. These fibrinogens are converted to fibrins, which help in clotting of the blood. And other factors for coagulation are also present in the plasma in inactive form. And once the process of cascade of reaction for clotting takes place, all these factors are converted to active form, and then the clotting takes place. Then comes globulin, which is involved in the defense mechanism of the body, and albumin helps in the osmotic balance of the blood. Plasma also contains minerals ion like sodium, calcium ion, magnesium ion, bicarbonates, chloride ion, etc. And the plasma without the clotting factors, that is the fibrinogen and other clotting factors, is known as serum. Then comes the formed elements, which are all the cell corpuscles. So the major cell is erythrocytes, and erythrocytes are biconcave disc in shape and have a mean diameter of 7.8 micrometer. They lack nucleus, and they are very flexible. And the flexibility of these RBC is because of spectrin protein, which is present below the erythrocyte plasma membrane and is a part of cytoskeleton. And in a healthy man, the average number of RBC is around 5.2 million uh, per ml of blood, and it is around 4.7 in women. And these RBC contain the hemoglobin protein, which is a globular protein majorly responsible for the transport of oxygen to all the tissues. And this hemoglobin makes up around 12 to 16 grams in every 100 ml of blood. And RBCs are in adults. RBCs are formed in the red bone marrow. In embryo, the primitive nucleated RBCs are produced by the yolk sac, and during the middle trimester of the gestation period, liver is the main source of RBC, and other than that, spleen and lymph nodes are also major source of RBC. And by the end of last month of gestation and adult stage, the bone marrow becomes the only source of RBC. These RBC have an average lifespan of 120 days, and since they lack nucleus, they cannot divide. And after 120 days, when they die, they are destroyed in the spleen, and the hemoglobin and other proteins are further utilized to form new erythrocytes. Then comes the leukocyte. These are also known as white blood cell, and these are responsible for the immunity of the body, and they are partially formed in the bone marrow cell, such as granulocytes, which include the eosinophil, basophil, and neutrophil, as well as monocytes, and few lymphocytes are formed in bone marrow cells. Other lymphocytes are also initially formed in bone marrow cells, but they are further matured or activated in other lymph tissues, such as thymus or other secondary lymph organs. And plasma cells are specialized type of B cells, which are produced after activation in the lymph nodes. So there are total 6 types of white blood cell which are present in blood, which are polymorphonuclear neutrophil, this one, then eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are made up of 2 types of cells, T lymphocyte as well as B lymphocytes, and plasma cells are modified effector B lymphocytes, which are formed after activation by antigen binding. Also, these monocytes are further developed into macrophages, which are larger phagocytic cell, which resides in tissue and helps in phagocytosis. And other than that, there are also few cells like dendritic cell as well as natural killer cell. So around 7,000 leukocytes are present in 1 microliter of blood, and 62% of this is made up of neutrophils. Around 2.3 or 3% is made up of eosinophils. Less than 1% is made up of basophils. 5.3 or 6% is made up of monocytes, and rest 30% is made up of lymphocytes. So let's talk about granulocyte. Granulocytes have irregular shaped nucleus with 2 to 5 lobes. So this nucleus are divided into many lobes which are connected to each other, and their cytoplasm contains granules, and these granules are responsible for killing of microorganisms as well as enhancing the allergic reaction or inflammation. And 3 types of granulocytes are present: basophils, eosinophils, as well as neutrophils. So basophils are those type of cells which can be easily stained by basic dye, and they have irregular shaped nucleus with 2 lobes. And these are non-phagotic cells, so they do not undergo phagocytosis. And these granules consist of histamines and other vasoactive mediator, which when released can mediate the size of the blood vessels, and therefore participates in allergies and hypersensitivity. And similar action is seen by mast cell, which also contains histamines and other molecules which are responsible for participating in the allergies and hypersensitivities. Then comes eosinophils, which can be stained by acidic dyes such as eosin, and these also contain 2 lobe nucleus which are connected by a slender thread of chromatin, this one. And these contain hydrolytic enzymes such as nucleases, glucuronidases, peroxidases, and basic proteins such as major basic protein. And these are important in defense against protozoan and helminths. So what happens when protozoan or helminths infect the body, they release these hydrolytic enzymes and cationic peptides and other reactive oxygen species, which damages the membrane of these protozoans and parasites and therefore kill them. And they also take part in allergic reaction because they have granules which contain histaminase and aryl sulfatase, which are down regulation of the molecules such as histamine and leukotriene respectively, which are released by the basophil cell. Then comes the neutrophil, and these are neutral. They can be stained by neutral dye. They are highly phagocytic cell, and they make up around 60% of this white blood cell. And they have nucleus made up of more than 2 lobes which are connected by a chromatin, and therefore they are also known as polymorphonuclear neutrophils or PMN. And they contain 2 types of granule. First is primary granules, which contains peroxidase, lysozyme, defensin, and other hydrolytic enzyme, and other secondary smaller granules make up the collagenase, lactoferrin, cathelicidin, and lysozyme, etc. Then comes lymphocytes. So lymphocytes are majorly of two types, B and T lymphocyte, and also natural killer cell are from the lymphoid progenitor cell, but I will not be talking about that right now. So the hematopoietic stem cell is the cell by which all the blood cells are formed inside the body, and these are further divided into two type of progenitor cell. One is the common lymphoid progenitor cell, and other is one is the common myeloid progenitor cell, and other is the lymphoid progenitor cell. The myeloid progenitor cell makes further divides to differentiate to form red blood cells, megakaryocytes, and granulocytes, etc. And these lymphoid progenitor cell makes the T cell as well as B cell. So developing T cell and B cell are formed in the bone marrow, and after that, this immature T lymphocytes are transported to thymus, where they mature, and then they reach the secondary lymphoid organ, where they are activated by antigen presenting cells, and therefore activated T lymphocytes are formed. Similarly, the B cells are also formed in bone marrow, and they are developed and matured inside the bone marrow. And once they are matured, they reach the secondary lymphoid organ, where they are also activated in presence of antigen, and they form the effector cell, which are known as plasma cells, which secretes antibody. So the T lymphocyte is responsible for cell-mediated immunity, and after activating, they release cytokines and other molecules, while the B lymphocyte forms the humoral immunity, and they release antibodies which acts against the pathogens. Then comes the thrombocytes. So thrombocytes are also known as platelets, and these are formed from the megakaryocytes. Megakaryocytes are large myeloid cells that reside in the bone marrow, and they are divided into many cell fragments, which give rise to thousands of platelets. So these platelets are not actually cells. These are small cell fragments that circulate in the blood, and they are responsible for coagulation or clotting of the blood. And in blood, there is around 1.5 to 3.5 lakhs platelets per ml of blood, and platelets can also release variety of factors which are involved in the coagulation or clotting of the blood. So then comes the blood group. All of you already know how the blood groups are determined. So inside the body, there are inside the RBC, on the surface of RBC, there are two types of antigens which are made up of polysaccharides, and these are known as A and B. So the gene responsible for this is IA and IB, and there is also an allele which is known as IO. So there are three types of allele for blood group which are responsible, that is IA, IB, and IO. And if one and out of these IA and IB are dominant over the IO type of allele, but they are co-dominant to each other. So if one IA and one IB is present on this inside the genome, and so it will express both type of polysaccharides, which is type A and type B, and such blood group will be AB type blood group. And so the antigen on the RBC will consist of both type A and type B antigen on the surface of the RBC. And since these antigens are present inside the cells, inside the body, so it will not produce antibody against these antigens. And so inside the plasma of such an individual, there will be no antibody against this A and B type. If only A polysaccharide is present on the surface of the RBC, then the blood group is known as A blood group, and such an individual will have antibodies against the B antigen. And so if a blood is transfused in such an individual which is having a blood group of B type, and it will have B antigen, so this antibody will act against it and cause agglutination. And so only those individuals which have blood group either A or O can act as a donor for an recipient which has a blood group A. And similarly for B, it contains the polysaccharide B on the surface of the antigen, and in the plasma of such an individual will have antibody against A, and only donor having B blood group or O blood group can give blood to such an recipient. And since AB contains both the antigen and do not have any type of antibody against any type of polysaccharides present on the RBC surface. So all type of donor having any type of blood group can donate blood to AB. So this is such individuals are known as universal recipient, and there is another type of blood group which is known as O blood group, and in this case there is no antigen present on the surface of the RTG, no A or no B antigen is present, and the plasma of such individual contains antibody against both the type, and so only they can accept blood from only individuals having O blood group, and since they do not contain any antigen on their surface, so if their blood is is infused inside any other individual having blood group A, B or O, no agglutination will take place because no antigen is present, so these antibodies will not react against it, and so the individual having O blood group are also known as universal donor. Now there is another type of antigen which is known as Rh antigen, and it is similar to the one present in rhesus monkey, and therefore the name Rh is given. And this is also observed on the surface on RBCs of majority of humans, around 80%. So if this antigen is present, such individual will be called as Rh positive, and if it is absent, such individual will be called as Rh negative. So blood group consists of AB and O type, and further positive or negative based on the Rh factor is present or not. So there is a well-known disease, phenomena which is known as erythroblastosis fetalis, in which if the father is Rh positive and the mother is Rh negative, and suppose the fetus developing inside the mother is having the blood group Rh positive, so during the first delivery, no problem will occur because the blood of the fetus will not come in contact with the blood of the mother. But while delivery, if some of the blood of the fetus comes in contact with the blood of the mother, the body of the mother will start producing antibody against the Rh factor, and if and during second pregnancy, if the fetus is again Rh positive, so now since these antibody against the Rh factor can easily pass through the placenta, they will reach inside the fetus and will coagulate or damage the fetal red blood cell, and this condition is known as erythroblastosis fetalis. Then comes coagulation of blood. So coagulation of blood is because of thread-like structure known as fibrin protein, which traps the blood vessels and prevent them from leaking in case of injury. So these fibrins are formed by conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. So this fibrinogen is the inactive form, and in presence of other proteins such as thrombin and ions such as calcium, these are converted to fibrin fibers, which further cross-link and trap the blood vessel and therefore cause clotting. And these thrombin are activated from prothrombin by presence of different factors such as thrombokinase, which is an enzyme which converts this prothrombin into thrombin, and in presence of calcium ion. And this activation of thrombokinase also takes place by a series of linked enzymic reaction, which is known as the cascade process, which involves various number of factors inside the plasma, which are present in inactive form. And so there are two major pathways of coagulation. One is intrinsic pathway and other is extrinsic pathway. So when tissue trauma is taking place, suppose there is an injury and the blood comes in direct contact with the surface of the cell, surface of the body, so many tissue factors will be activated and a cascade series of reaction will take place, and this will activate the prothrombin to thrombin and then the downstream fibrinogen to fibrin conversion. And similarly, there is another pathway which is known as intrinsic pathway. It will occur if there is any kind of internal bleeding, or if the blood comes in contact with the collagen, then also many series of factors will be activated, and the chain of reaction will take place, and in the end the prothrombin will be activated, which will convert the fibrinogen into fibrin. So both these pathway can lead to the coagulation of blood. I will not get into details of these factors because then it will be too long. Now let's talk about human circulatory system. I will be emphasizing more on this, so please listen carefully. So the The heart is the major organ of human circulatory system, and it is mesodermally derived organ, which is present in the thoracic cavity between the two lungs, and it is slightly tilted to the left, and the size of it is of size of clenched feet, and it is protected by double-walled membrane bag, which is known as pericardium, which encloses pericardial fluid. This pericardial fluids help in preventing shock during so that no damage to heart take place. And this heart is further divided into four chambers, right atrium, which are known as atriums and ventricles. So it is divided into right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. And in primitive organisms such as fishes and amphibians, there only there is a, in fishes only two chambers are present, while in amphibians and other reptiles, three chambers are present. So in amphibians and reptiles, two atrium and one ventricle is present, except in case of a crocodile, in which two ventricles are present. So crocodile has four-chambered heart, and uh, all the birds and mammals contain four-chamber heart. So the thin muscular wall called interatrial septum separates both the atrium, which is right atrium and left atrium, whereas a thick walled interventricular septum separates the left ventricle as well as right ventricle. And the atrium and ventricle of the same side are separated by a thick fibrous tissue, which is known as atrioventricular septum. And this fibrous tissue the atrium and ventricle are connected only via the valves. Otherwise, the blood cannot pass through this fibrous tissue. So the heart is made up of cardiac muscles, and there are three major kinds of cardiac muscle. One is known as atrial muscle, other is ventricular muscle, and the third is conductive muscle fiber, which is responsible for the conduction of heart. So the cardiac muscle is a syncytium of many heart muscle, in which cardiac cells are interconnected. So these are cardiac cells. These are interconnected to each other and highly branched, and these regions are known as intercalated disc, which is the uh, cell membrane of both the cardiac muscle. So this is one cardiac muscle, this is another cardiac muscle, and these are the cell membrane which makes up the intercalated disc. So these are interconnected. So when one of these cells become excited, the action potential will spread to all the other cells via this lattice network, and these intercalated disc contains many gap junctions in between. So the signal or the potential is passed from one cell to other cell via these gap junctions present in the intercalated disc. And the atrium and ventricles, as I said, are separated by fibrous tissue, and the potential or the conduction cannot be transported from atrium to ventricle via this fibrous tissue. So special mechanism is required to transfer the potential or the potential from the atrium to ventricle. So this is the cardiac muscle, and there are specialized structure which is known as transverse tubule or T-tubule. So when this transverse tubule is also present in skeletal muscles, and these are present at the end of a sarcomere. So if this is one sarcomere, so T-tubules are present at both the end of a sarcomere, and these are formed throughout the cardiac muscle or skeletal muscle. And these are very important because when the action potential passes over cardiac muscle, this action potential of the cardiac muscles to all the cardiac muscle via this transverse tubule. The exact mechanism I will explain right now. So first of all, let's see what is the action potential and how is it developed in the muscle cell. So membrane potential is calculated by introducing a capillary electrode inside the cell membrane, and then the potential is measured. So this is the action potential of a skeletal muscle, and we can see that the resting membrane potential is around minus 90 millivolt, and when the depolarization occurs, the potential rises up to plus 35, and immediately it repolarizes back to the resting membrane potential. But this is not the case in case of cardiac muscle. In cardiac muscle, the resting potential is around minus 85 millivolt, which rises during the depolarization up to plus 20 millivolt, and then it remains depolarized for around 0.2 second in case of atrial muscle and around 0.3 second in case of ventricular muscle, and after that only it repolarizes back to the resting membrane potential. So this extended depolarization is known as plateau. So let's see why this plateau is formed. So this is the plateau, and now the plateau is formed because in cardiac muscle there are two types of channels. One is the fast sodium channel, and other one is slow calcium channel, which is also known as L-type calcium channel ion channel. And this slow calcium channel is not present in the skeletal muscle. So what happens is when the action potential reaches, the fast sodium channel opens and immediately closes back. So a large influx of sodium takes place, and the membrane potential increases from negative -85 to positive 20 or 25 millivolt. And at the same time, this slow calcium channel are slower to open, so they also open but a bit late, and they remain open for up to longer time, that is around 0.2 millisecond. So they 200 milliseconds. So they remain open for 200 milliseconds, and therefore the membrane potential remains in the depolarized state. And once the calcium channel gets inactivated and the sodium channel is already inactivated, so now the potential again decreases and repolarization occurs. Also, one more thing is that the permeability of cardiac muscle membrane for potassium ion channel also decreases when during the opening of calcium channel. So only when the calcium channel is closed, the potassium channel will open, and only after that the potassium outward flux will take place. Before that, the potassium will not flow outside the cell, and therefore the membrane will remain depolarized. So now what happens is calcium influx is decreased and the potassium influx is increased, so the membrane reaches back to the resting membrane potential. Now this is a T tubule, this one. So when the action potential is passed, so it releases. Now this T tubules contain many mucopolysaccharides which store the calcium ion. So when the action potential is reaches the cardiac muscle, this calcium is released from the T tubules and enter inside the cardiac cell, where it further activate the ryanodine receptor channel. These are ryanodine receptor channels, and will stimulate the sarcoplasmic reticulum inside the cardiac muscle to release the intracellular calcium. To release the calcium inside the cytoplasm, which will further cause the muscle contraction. So in skeletal muscle, this sarcoplasmic reticulum is very well developed, and all the calcium responsible for contraction is because of the calcium present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. But this sarcoplasmic reticulum inside the cardiac muscle is not very well developed. So most of the calcium which is coming from the T tubule is responsible for the muscle contraction, and the T tubule in the cardiac muscles are almost 5 times bigger than that of skeletal muscle. So this is the mechanism by which the calcium enters inside the cardiac cell and the contraction of muscle takes place. Now comes the cardiac cycle. So this is the cardiac cycle. Now blood enters through the vena cava into the right atrium. It reaches the right ventricle through the valve, and then this deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle is passed to the pulmonary region, that is the lungs, where the carbon dioxide is released and oxygen taken and will be mixed with the blood, and the oxygenated blood will now reach from the pulmonary region, from the lungs, via the pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins inside the
थोड़ा स्लोली बोलो ना, बहुत रैपिडली बोल रहे हैं.
ओके सर, ओके सर.
ठीक.
तो पहले का टॉपिक समझ आया कि वो वापस समझाऊं?
ठीक है, मतलब ओवरऑल क्या है, बहुत रैपिडली बोलते ना, जल्दी जल्दी, तो थोड़ा सा अपना स्पीड थोड़ा कम कर दो, अच्छा रहेगा.
ओके ओके सर,
ठीक है ना. बाकी अच्छा है, बहुत अच्छा कंटेंट, बहुत अच्छा सब कुछ है.
So the deoxygenated blood, which is collected from all the tissues, reaches the right atrium, and from the right atrium during the atrial contraction, it reaches the right ventricle, and this right ventricle then transport the blood towards the lungs, both the lungs, left and right lungs, via the pulmonary vein, and this pulmonary vein, the blood reaches the lungs, and where the carbon dioxide is released and the oxygen is taken inside the blood, and this oxygenated blood reaches to the left atrium via the pulmonary artery, and then this blood from the left atrium is transferred to the left ventricle, and this left ventricle contract, and the blood reaches all the other systemic tissues such as liver, brain, etc. And after reaching the tissue, the oxygen is transferred to the tissue, and the carbon dioxide is collected back, and similarly those deoxygenated blood is coming back to right atrium, and this cycle continues. This is known as double circulation because the blood enters the heart, leaves the heart, and enters the so the blood enters and leaves the heart twice during the whole circulation. Once in form of deoxygenated blood and once in form of oxygenated blood. So this is an important diagram. I will explain every single part of it. So please study this carefully. So let's begin with the function of atrium as primer pumps. So blood normally flows continuously from this vein into the atrium, as I said, and because there are valves inside the between the atrium and ventricle, so these valves remain open initially when both atrium and ventricle are relaxing or they are in diastolic stage. So 80% of blood flow which reaches the atrium directly enters the ventricle even before the atrium contracts. So since the valves are open and the blood is coming from the veins inside the right atrium, it will directly reach the ventricle, and the rest 20% of the blood reaches the ventricle because of the atrium contraction. So uh, this is the atrium contraction. We can see atrial pressure. So the pressure of the atrium is around zero and rises only a bit. This dotted line, the dotted line is the atrial pressure. So it remains almost zero, and only during the contraction of atrium it rises a bit and back again. It remains back to zero. And so these make up three waves. The first wave, that is the A wave. This one is the A wave. This is caused by the atrium contraction. So when the atrium is contracted and the 20% of the blood is released inside the ventricle, it causes a rise in the pressure of the atrial pressure, and this is the A wave. Then comes the C wave. C waves occur when the AV valves are closed. Now, AV valve or the atrioventricular valve will be closed backward when the ventricle will start to contract. So, when the pressure inside the ventricle will increase and it will start to contract, the AV valve will close and will move backward towards the atrium, and this will cause an increase in the pressure, and this will cause this formation of C wave in the atrial pressure. And then comes the V wave, which occurs toward the end of ventricular contraction. So meanwhile, when the AV valve was closed, so the blood was flowing inside the atrium and it could not pass inside the ventricle. So the atrium was being filled with the blood coming from the veins. So those filling of atrium will cause the increase in the atrial pressure, and this will form the V wave. So these are the three waves atrial pressure A, C, and V wave. Then comes the function of ventricle as pump. So when both atrium and ventricle are in diastole, the filling of ventricle take place. As I said, 80% of blood will directly enter the atrium and back and into the ventricle. Now, as soon as the systole of the ventricle is over, the ventricular pressure will fall. Meanwhile, the blood is being filled inside the atrium. So, since the pressure is very low in the ventricle after the systole, and the blood is flowing inside, and the pressure inside the atrium is high because of the blood which is filled in the atrium. So, the AV valve will now open, and the blood will rapidly flow inside the ventricle. And this period is known as period of rapid filling of the ventricle, because rapid filling of the ventricle takes place after the AV valves are open. Then comes a period of isovolumic or isometric contraction. Now, what happens in this case is, since the ventricular pressure starts to rise, so because of this pressure, the ventricle will start to contract, and because of this, the AV valve will close. Now, AV valves are closed, and the pressure inside the ventricle is not as high that it can open the semilunar valve, such as aortic valve or the pulmonary valve. So both the valves, that is atrioventral valve, that is bicuspid or tricuspid valve, as well as the semilunar valve, both are closed, and so the volume inside the ventricle remain constant, and the pressure keeps rising. So this is known as isovolumic contraction. So the volume inside the ventricle is same because both the valves are closed, but the pressure is rising. So this ventricular pressure is shown by the red line. So initially, when the this small region is known as isovolumic contraction. So in this, the ventricle volume, this blue line is ventricular volume. So we can see the ventricle volume remains the same because both the valves are closed. But at the same time, the pressure inside the ventricle is increasing. So this region is known as isovolumic contraction. Now, as soon as the pressure reaches 80 mm of Hg, which is the pressure present in the aorta, so now the semilunar valve will open after this. So up to that, isovolumic contraction takes place. So then comes the period of ejection. So in this, the pressure inside the ventricle has risen enough, that is up to 80 millimeter of Hg, and then the semilunar valve will open, and the ventricle will keep on contracting, and the blood which was filled inside the ventricle will now be ejected inside the aorta or artery, uh, pulmonary artery, yes, pulmonary artery, and this is known as period of ejection. So the pressure is still rising, but the volume of the ventricle has suddenly decreased because all the blood is ejected inside the aorta. Earlier the volume was same and the pressure was rising. Now the pressure is increasing up to certain extent and the volume is decreasing because all the blood is transferred to the aorta. Then comes the isovolumic relaxation. So in this, again, the because the contraction of ventricle is complete, so now the pressure inside the ventricle will decrease, and the pressure inside the aorta is still high. So because of high pressure inside the aorta and very low pressure in the ventricle, the blood will try to flow back, and at that time the semilunar valve will close again. But the atrioventral valve, that is the bicuspid and tricuspid valve, has not opened yet. So again, since both the valves are closed, so the volume will remain the same, and since relaxation of ventricle is taking place, so this is known as period of isovolumic relaxation. So again, we can see the volume inside the ventricle will remain the same. That is, no increase in the volume will take place, and the ventricular pressure will decrease. This is the isovolumic relaxation. So after this, again, when the AV valve will open, the blood will start to fill from atrium to ventricle. The volume will increase. And during the diastole of the ventricle. So, and the ventricular pressure will remain zero because the ventricle is in the diastolic phase. So there are few terminologies. One is end diastolic volume. So end diastolic volume is the volume of the blood which is present inside the ventricle after the ventricle has finished the diastolic stage and now it will contract. So during this diastolic stage, the blood inside the ventricle was keep on filling because from the atrium, and so the volume is around 110 to 120 ml, and after this the systole will take place. So this is known as end diastolic volume. Now after the systole of ventricle has taken place, that is, the ventricle has contracted and ejected the blood into the aorta and pulmonary artery. Now the blood which is left inside the ventricle is known as end systolic volume, and this is around 40 to 50 ml. So only not all of the 120 or 120 ml of the blood which was present in the ventricle is ejected out. 40 to 50 ml blood is still remaining inside the ventricle. So only around 70 ml of blood has been ejected in one contraction of ventricle, and this volume is known as stroke volume output. Now this stroke volume output is not fixed; it can vary according to the metabolic need and the other metabolic need. So there is another terminology known as cardiac output. It is the total amount of blood which is pumped by the heart, or more specifically left ventricle, per minute. So it is the product of heart rate, which is the number of contraction per minute, as well as the stroke volume. So in one contraction, 70 ml of blood is ejected, and in 1 minute around 72 such contraction takes place. So the total cardiac output will be 72 into 70, which is around 5 to 6 liters per minute. So this is the ideal cardiac output. It may vary depending on the change in the stroke volume as well as the heart rate. The heart rate can be regulated as well as stroke volume can be regulated by the various under the control of sympathetic as well as parasympathetic nervous system. So now comes the function of valves. There are 4 kinds of valve. Two major kinds of valve: atrioventricular valve and the semilunar valve. The atrioventricular valve consists of further two types, which is tricuspid and the mitral valve, which is also known as bicuspid. So this is the diagram of a left ventricle, left atrium and ventricle, that is left chamber. So this is the mitral valve, and this is the semilunar valve, which is known as aortic valve. So AV valve consists of tricuspid and mitral valve, and the semilunar valve consists of aortic and pulmonary valve. And these prevent the backflow of the blood from ventricle to atrium, the atrioventricular valve, and the semilunar valve will prevent the backflow from aorta to pulmonary artery. And these valves close when a backward pressure gradient pushes the blood backward. So the valves are open, and when the pressure gradient is formed in the backward direction, this will close inside in the backward direction. So suppose this is the ventricle, and the pressure gradient will form from ventricle to atrium, because the pressure will be low in case of atrium and high in case of ventricle. So because of this, because of the backward flow, this valve will move backward and close. And there are specialized muscles known as papillary muscles, which helps in regulating the opening and closing of this valve. So papillary muscles are connected to the chordate tendinae. These are the fiber-like structure which are connected to the mitral valve or bicuspid valve. So these papillary muscles contract and prevent the valve from bulging too far backward during the ventricular contraction. So what happens is if these papillary muscles are not present during the ventricular contraction, the pressure will be so high that these valve will move backward inside the aorta and will bulge inside the aorta and will remain open in the backward direction, and the backflow will not be prevented. So this papillary muscles will pull the valves towards it and keep the valves closed, and via the help of chordate tendon. So again, this is the whole cardiac cycle explained. So when the mitral valve, that is the AV valve or the bicuspid valve, is open, so what happens is the ventricular volume will increase, because the blood coming to the atrium will enter inside the ventricle, and during the atrial contraction, the volume will keep on increasing up to 120 ml, which was the end diastolic volume, after which the mitral valve will close. So once the mitral valve is closed, now the ventricular contraction will begin. That is, the systole of ventricle will begin, and as I said, isovolumic contraction takes place. What happens? The volume will remain the same, that is 120 ml, but the pressure inside will rise up to 80 ml. So this represents the isovolumic contraction. After the pressure reaches the 80 mm, the aortic valve will open. The aortic valve will open, and now the period of ejection will take place, in which what happens? The volume inside the ventricle will decrease, because the blood is flowing inside. Blood is transported from the ventricle to the aorta, but the pressure will rise up to 120 and then decrease. And after which the aortic valve will now close, and since the mitral valve is still closed, so again the volume will remain the same, and this is known as the end systolic volume, because the systole of ventricle has taken place already, and the pressure will now decrease because of diastole of ventricle. After the pressure reaches back to the starting, the mitral valve will open again, and the ventricular filling of the blood will take place. So the area of this total graph represents the work output of the ventricle, and this volume, which is the end from the end systolic volume to end diastolic volume, represents the stroke volume. Now from the cardiac conduction system. So we know that the heart beat at regular time interval. So how is the conduction of the how is the generation of action potential in this cardiac muscle regulated? So the cardiac conduction system is a group of specialized cardiac muscles that are present in the wall of heart, which sends this signal to the heart muscle to cause contraction. And these are composed of SA node, which is known as sinus node or sinoarterial node. Then the AV node, which is also known as atrioventricular node. Then this is the bundle of His, which is divided into two bundles, which are known as bundle branches, and which are further subdivided into Purkin's fibers. So the normal rhythmic impulse is generated inside the sinus node, which is present at the near the vena cava of the right atrium, and the signal is conducted to all the atrial muscle, and via the internodal pathways, these are the internodal pathways, it reaches the AV node, which is the atrioventricular node, and from this atrioventricular node, the impulse is delayed for some time, and then reaches the bundle, left and right bundle, and the Purkinje fiber, which then conduct the impulse to all part of the ventricle. So the SA node is a small flattened strip of cardiac muscle, specialized cardiac muscle, which is located near the vena cava in the right atrium. And now the resting membrane potential of SA node is around -55 to -60 millivolt. Earlier you were seeing that in the cardiac muscle, the resting membrane potential was around -90. So the resting potential of sinus node is usually high, which is only around -55 to -60. And because of this, the regular frequent conduction of the conduction takes place inside this conduction muscle. So this is caused, the cause of this lesser negativity in the cell membrane is because of the natural leaky channels for sodium and calcium ion. So there are leaky channels which are present in such muscles, and they allow movement of sodium and channel inside from the extracellular region to inside the cell continuously. So suppose this the resting membrane potential is around -55. So this leaky channels will continuously allow the movement of sodium and calcium inside the cell, and the membrane potential will keep on increasing up to certain extent. So when it will reach the threshold, now the calcium channel will open, and sudden influx of calcium will take place, and depolarization will occur. So this is what happens. Now, since the high sodium concentration, the concentration of sodium is very high in the extracellular fluid. Okay, and this leaky sodium channel are open, which will allow the movement of sodium from outside to inside. So because of the concentration gradient, the sodium will slowly keep on moving inside the cell. Now, earlier the membrane potential was around -55 or -60. So it will keep on increasing up to -40. And when it will reach -40, it will cross the threshold, and now the calcium channel will open, and influx of calcium will take place, and the action potential will occur because of depolarization. And once the depolarization occurs, again the calcium channel will get inactivated, and the calcium permeability will decrease. And as soon as the calcium permeability decreases, the potassium channel will open, and the potassium efflux will take place. So the membrane potential will again repolarize back to more than -60, around -60 or -60. And again, since the sodium channel were open, the leaky channel, the slowly increase in the potential will take place. And again, once it reaches the -40, the action potential will again take place. So this takes place at regular interval, and because of this, the conduction takes place. Now, the atrial conduction system is organized such that the cardiac impulse from atrium do not enter into the ventricle rapidly. So when the atrial contraction is taking place, if the conduction is passed on from the AV node to the ventricle immediately, the atrium and ventricle will contact at the same time, which we do not want. We want that atrium contact first and fill the ventricle, and after the atrial contraction, the ventricle should contract. So there should be some lag between the passing of signal from atrium to ventricle. So this is maintained by the AV node. So AV node and these conductive fibers cause the delay, and this is because they have very less gap junction. Earlier, all the conduction muscle had very large amount of gap junctions, so the conduction would take place easily, and the movement of conduction was very fast. But in this region, near the fibrous tissue of atrioventricular fibrous tissue, the gap junction inside the conductive system is very less. So there is the cause of delay of the conduction. So suppose at 0th second, the SA node is undergoing action potential, is generating action potential. So by 0.03 second, the atrial contraction will take place, and by 0.12 second, so and the contraction will reach the AV node, and the movement from AV node to the ventricle will take place only after 0.12 second and up to 0.16 second. So there is a delay of 0.1 second, and during this 0.1 second, the atrial contraction already take place, and after that the ventricular contraction take place. So since 72 contraction take place in 1 minute, so one contraction or one cardiac cycle takes around 0.8 second, and this 0.1 second delay is caused because of this AV node. So here we can see that at 0 second the conduction is conducted, and all the atrial muscle contract within the 0.1 second, and after reaching the bundle of His, the conduction is already delayed by 0.1 second, and then it will rapidly move towards the Purkinje fiber, and the ventricle will undergo contraction. So once it crosses the AV node and enters inside the bundle of His, the conduction will speed up, and Purkinje fiber will immediately transfer the conduction to all the ventricular muscles. Now comes electrocardiograph. It is a graphical representation of the electric activity of the heart during cardiac cycle, and it consists of 4 waves, which are P waves, QRS complex, and T wave. So P wave is caused when the atrium depolarization occurs and atrial contraction is about to begin. So when the sinoatrial node will undergo action potential and the atrium depolarization will occur, so there will be a rise in the potential, and this is represented by the P wave, and this represents the atrial depolarization. And then comes the QRS complex. So this occurs at 0.2 second when the ventricle is about to depolarize. Ventricle depolarizes and ventricular contraction will take place. So at the same time, the atrial diastole will take place, or the atrial repolarization will occur. But because of the masking, because of the high increase in the millivolt because of the QRS complex, thus the repolarization of atrium is hidden or masked because of the QRS wave, and it is not visible. And after the ventricular contraction, when the ventricle starts to undergo diastole, so the ventricular depolarization will occur, and this repolarization will occur. Sorry. So this will be represented by T waves. So this represents atrial depolarization, this represents ventricular depolarization, and this represents ventricular repolarization. So this is known as repolarization wave, and the other two are known as depolarization wave. And based on the pattern of the ECG, we can identify the activity of the heart, and we can check the heart rate, as well as if there is any kind of irregularity in the heartbeat of the heart. So regulation of cardiac activity. The contraction and the activity of the cardiac muscle can be regulated by sympathetic as well as parasympathetic, which is also known as vagus nerves. So these nerves are bind to the SA nodes as well as the cardiac muscles of the heart, and these are the sympathetic nerves. The sympathetic nerves are mostly connected to the ventricular muscles, and the parasympathetic nerves are usually connected to the atrium and the nodes, which is the SA node and AV node. Heart rate by regulating the conduction of the SA node, as well as they can regulate the strength of the muscular contraction. So this sympathetic nervous system can regulate the strength of the ventricular contraction, and this will affect the stroke volume or the amount of blood which can be ejected. So under normal condition, there is some sympathetic stimulation always. So the heart rate, which is around 72 per minute in ideal case, is occurring when there is a slight sympathetic stimulation. If that sympathetic stimulation will not take place, so if as I said, if the sympathetic stimulation will not take place, the heart rate will decrease, or the pumping of blood will decrease by 30%. So in case of zero sympathetic stimulation, the cardiac output will decrease by 30%, and parasympathetic system further decreases the heart rate or the cardiac output. So if parasympathetic stimulation take place, the cardiac output will further decrease, and maximum, and in case of very high sympathetic stimulation, the cardiac output will increase many times than the normal cardiac output. So strong sympathetic stimulation can increase the heart rate up from 70 to up to 180 or 200, and sometimes even 250 beats per minute. So under strong sympathetic stimulation, the heart rate as well as the stroke volume will increase, and because the muscular contraction of the ventricle will also increase. And in case of strong stimulation of parasympathetic nervous fiber, the heart rate will stop for a few seconds, but then the heart will usually escape and will beat to 20 to 40 beats per minute. So what happens is, because of strong stimulation of parasympathetic nerve fibers, the SA node will stop conducting. And since the SA node will stop conducting, the heart will stop beating for a few seconds. But if the SA node will not keep on conducting, then the escape will take place. That is, the AV node also has the property to conduct to undergo conduction. So it will start to conduct, but this conduction by AV node is slower, which is around 20 to 40 beats per minute. So now the heart rate will decrease to 20 to 40 beats per minute. This will occur only in case of strong stimulation of parasympathetic, and only up to as long as the parasympathetic stimulation continues. Once the parasympathetic stimulation is reduced, the heart rate will again go back to normal. Then comes double circulation. So the blood is flown inside.
रुको रुको रुको, किसी का कुछ क्वेश्चन है तो अभी पूछ ले, फिर डबल सर्कुलेशन का शुरू करना ना, कुछ है ना, बैक में जाओ।
हाँ सर.
हाँ,
Any questions, anyone?
yes, if anybody have any question, then you can ask. Hello.
I can't see the chat box, so please unmute yourself.